Hi, my name is Aya, you're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to talk about my favorite female main characters. So I did a similar video for my favorite male characters, but it's really like my book boyfriends, which coincidentally I'm actually wearing the same sweater. I actually didn't realize it before I started filming, but I will leave that linked for you. So if you are interested in what kind of main male characters I love, then definitely check that video out. This is really gonna be in no particular order. I love these women for different reasons, and the genres and subgenres run the gambit. So I have one manga, I have a couple historical romances, I have some contemporary romances, I have some fantasy romances. Some of them I have loved for years, and some of them have become a favorite this year. So let's get started with probably one of my favorites, even though I've only read about her this year, and it's Lana from the Mindf series by St. Abbey. So I think Lana Myers is a lot of people's favorite female main characters. So this is a series of 5 novellas following her getting her revenge by brutally torturing and murdering people or men that have done something horrifying in her past. And you follow her romance with an FBI agent on her case. So she's a serial killer and he wants to catch her, but they fall in love. And Lana, she has such righteous anger, but in her heart, she's a really good person. It's just something horrible happened to her. And I love how in this book, she equates herself to like a romantic, like because she was a romantic, because she was such a trusting individual, that is why she became the person she is today, because of events that happened to such a great, like to such a good, loving human being. I was rooting for her every step of the way, even though technically, obviously what she's doing is not right. You're not supposed to get this type of revenge on your own. That is why we have things in place like the police and stuff like that, because if you take your revenge on your own, then the world becomes a lawless place. But because all these institutions that were set up did not do anything for her, she decided to get that revenge on her own. And like I said, I was rooting for her every step of the way. She is such a great character to follow. And even though Logan, like if Logan was in any other book, he would be the shining star. Like I would head over heels fall in love with him. And even though I technically did in this book, Lana really was the shining star in this book. Like I really fell in love with her. I thought she was such a great character, and all I wanted to do was know about her backstory, know how she was before all this happened to her, but also I just wanted her to get her revenge at the end of the day. So yeah, definitely Lana Myers from the Mind F series. Another woman that I read about this year was Misery from Bride by Ali Hazelwood. So Misery is a vampire, and in this world, vampires, humans, and werewolves know about the existence of the other one. In this world, vampires and humans get sent to each other's territories as collateral. So every 10 years, a vampire child will go into human territory for 10 years, and a human child will go into vampire territory for 10 years, and they are called the collateral. And Misery was a collateral for the humans, and now her father wants her to marry a werewolf, so essentially also become a collateral for the werewolves. She, at first, doesn't want to do that, but then she finds out that the werewolves may have something to do with the disappearance of her best friend, so she goes and she marries the werewolf alpha named Lo. And this is single point of view, so you only really are in Misery's head, except for every chapter starts with a snippet of Lo's point of view. And even though I did really like Lo, Misery for me was once again, the shining star of this book. I thought she was so funny. Like I laughed out loud so much while reading this book. Once again, I was just rooting for her. Like she wanted to find out what was happening with her friend, and I wanted her to get those answers. I thought she was such a great character to follow. She's definitely my favorite Ali Hazelwood female character, even though I did like her female characters in the past before. Misery is just a special one for me. I just really loved her. And every time I think about this book, it's not Lo that I mostly think about, it's mainly Misery. So that's why she's a favorite female character for me. Really loved her, and I would highly recommend this book. The last one that I read in 2024 was Farah from the Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne. So this is a historical romance, as you can see, and this book starts off with a couple chapters from the past, or a chapter from the past, where Farah meets this little boy named Dugan, and she's 8, he's 10, and they become very best friends. And then, since she's betrothed to this awful man who's like decades older than her, they decide to handfast, which basically means they're married, even though, like I said, she's like 8 and he's 10. And then she gets assaulted by this priest at this convent, I guess, that they live in. So he attacks this priest and actually kills him, which gets him sent to prison. And 10 years later, he actually dies in prison. And now Farah has decided to live as Dugan's widow and just go on her way. She works for Scotland Yard. And then one day, the most notorious criminal ever walks in, Dorian Blackwell, the Black Heart of Benmore, and she's intrigued by him, he's intrigued by her, and then he kidnaps her and takes her to his keep, and he wants her to get married to him, and she eventually agrees because he used to know Dugan in prison, and he wants to get revenge for everything that happened to Dugan in prison. And as much as I really love Dorian, like, he was such a great hero. Like, he's like my type of hero, a scar tortured hero with some mysteries in his past that you're just dying to find out. I really, really love Farah in this book. I just loved how she didn't take any shit from him, even though technically she was his captor. She fought back every step of the way. And then when they did eventually get married, since he was in prison for 10 years and almost like every awful thing you can conceive of happened to him as a little boy, he has issues touching people. So he doesn't want to have any like physical relationship with her at all. She's adamant that she does want that, and she's very clear in her like I said, she's very clear in what she wants, and she goes after those things. I thought she was a very, very strong heroine. I thought she was a very smart heroine. And I remember like really loving her very much, even though, like I said, usually with these types of stories, since the hero is such an intriguing hero, the heroine usually falls to the wayside. This case, it definitely wasn't. Like, she stood her own as much as he did, in my opinion. I was as intrigued by her and about her story as I was his. So really loved it. I also loved how so he lives in this castle and he has these people working for him that are also his friends. And I really loved how she made them fall in love with her as well. They started defending her against him, and I really loved that. And I also love the fact that, so she works at Scotland Yard and all these prostitutes kept getting arrested, and I loved how she befriended them as well. So love her very much. Indy from The Right Move by Liz Tomford. So of course she had to make an appearance. Once again, even though Ryan Shea is definitely one of my book boyfriends, I loved her almost as much as I loved him. Like, he's the perfect man, in my opinion, like the perfect book boyfriend. He's just like everything that I would ever want, ever. So once again, very difficult for the female character to shine as brightly as he did, but she managed to do it. So this book is about Indy and Ryan, and in the first book in the series, Mile High, Indy's boyfriend cheats on her, so she needs a place to stay, and Stevie, the heroine from the first book, asks her brother to take Indy in, and her brother is Ryan, who's a famous basketball player, and he reluctantly agrees. He really doesn't want to do that because in the first book, they had some very awkward interactions together, but eventually he agrees because he loves his sister so much. So she moves in with him, so this is a roommate to lover, so obviously I was gonna love it. And at first, he doesn't want her to, like, he wants her just to move out as soon as possible, so he makes the rent really cheap for her so that she can save up as much as she can to move out. Eventually, they fake date as well, and she just loosens him up a little bit, and he starts falling for her. And I really love Indy because she's just like almost every single reader out there. I love how much she reads. I love how much she cares about the people around her. I love how she brightens up his day and his world in little ways. I just love how funny she is as well. I love what a good friend she is. And I love that she's very independent as well. Like, even though she's struggling in this book, obviously financially, because there's something she needs to save up for, she just takes that all in stride. Like, she gets like several jobs to pay the bills so that she can pay them. And even though it's obviously very heartbreaking what happened to her, because she was in a long-term relationship, she thought she was going to have kids with this man. He cheats on her, and almost every single one of her friends chooses his side at the end of the day, which is horrifying. But I love how she gets her own friend group with CV and with the hockey players. I just really, really fell in love with her. And like I said, it was difficult because usually when you have such an amazing hero like Ryan, like you have to have an equally amazing woman. Otherwise, he outshines her. And I didn't feel like he did in this book. I really loved her too, and I thought she was an amazing character. And like one of the things that made me like endeared me to her so much was like in one of the first chapters, page 32, where she asks, she asked Ryan, ever hear the phrase, she's not like other girls? He gives a small nod of his head. Yeah, that's not me. I'm just like every other chick, as basic as they come. I had an Uggs face, I had a skinny jeans face, I like my books with romance, my coffee with more creamer than caffeine, and I even take aesthetic pictures of my food anytime I'm at a restaurant. I just love that. Like, usually, obviously, the girls with main character energy, stuff like that, get annoying. I just love how basic she is and that she owns up to that, which makes her the least basic girl ever. I just love her. And I think almost every reader can relate to her, which obviously makes her, I think, a favorite female character for a lot of people. Lara from the Bridge Kingdom series by Daniel L. Jensen. It's a series of duologies, and the first duology follows Lara and Aaron. And in this world, there are four big kingdoms, and one of them is the Bridge Kingdom. And basically the Bridge Kingdom is very powerful because they own this bridge where a lot of trade goes through in a safe way, and because of that they can charge fees. And the other kingdoms want that bridge because if you have that bridge, you can earn a lot of money and you have a lot of power. So Lara is a princess, her father is a king from one of the other kingdoms, and he wants this bridge. So he has like 12 daughters, and he has trained them ever since they were little girls in all the ways to basically kill somebody and seduce somebody. And his plan is to choose one of those girls at the end of the day, when they're of age, to marry the king of the Bridge Kingdom and then kill him. At the day of the choosing, Lara ends up killing every single one of her sisters so that she can be the one to marry the king. Of course, she ends up going to the Bridge Kingdom and sees that she's been lied to all her life and that things are not what they seem. And then she ends up falling in love with the kingdom, the people, and its king. I really fell in love with Lara in this book, even though Aaron is an amazing hero as well. I thought Lara was such a strong character. I tend to love in fantasies the type of heroines that are take charge, that at first glance you think they don't care about anybody, they're ruthless, they're mean, but once you get to know them, it turns out that they have this heart of gold and that they do really care about a lot of people, and that is exactly what Lara is. Of course, she's there for a particular purpose, and she's there to seduce somebody and kill them. But I do love that once she gets evidence that things are not what they seem, she's smart enough to realize what has been happening. And I just love that. I love smart heroines, and she is as smart as they come. And I also love, like, so in the second book, things, like in the first book, things happen that are awful. And I love how in the second book, she makes amends. She does everything in her power to rectify everything that happened in the first book. And I just love her. I love her very much. I have not continued on with the series yet, so I've only read the first duology, but I thought it was perfect. And you can, like, the first duology wraps up their romance. So I would highly recommend it very much, and I cannot wait to actually... So I reread The Bridge Kingdom recently, but I have not read the second book yet, so I cannot wait to do that and then continue on with the series. But yeah, Lara is an amazing female character in my opinion. Willa from Heartless by Elsie Silver, of course. I think she's a lot of people's favorite female characters. So even though Heartless is not my favorite book in the Chestnut Spring series, that honor goes to Powerless. Of course, I really loved Heartless. So this is a single dad nanny romance. And Cade, who's the single dad, no nanny has been good enough for his son. He keeps constantly firing nannies, and he has a hard time finding one because he's like a hot single dad. A lot of women apply for the position simply just to get in his pants. And since he obviously loves his son very much, he wants somebody that, like, their first priority is his son. So Summer from the first book just gets tired of his bullshit, so she tells him that he's not gonna have a choice. She's gonna ask her friend Willa to become the nanny. He eventually agrees, even though he's very, very attracted to Willa. And Willa just comes in like a wrecking ball and just brings sunshine, fun, and happiness into his life. And like Willa endeared me to her so much from the very beginning because she's not here for Cade's bullshit, and she's gonna tell it to his face, even though she's 10 years younger than him. So he's grumpy, she's sunshine. He's grumpy to the point of being rude. So on their first night, she sets the tone because he's being very, very rude to her. Like, it's not okay what he's saying. She just gets up and she leaves. She's like, I don't want, like, you cannot treat me like this, and I'm just gonna leave. And then he realizes what he did, and he realizes that Luke, his son, really does like her, and that she, at the end of the day, is a good nanny. So he asks her to stay, and then she's like, beg. I'm like, girl, yes, you tell him. So that scene, I sometimes find myself just thinking about that scene and just giggling. So he's like, pardon me. She's like, you heard me. Beg. And then he does. And then I believe at one point, once they actually are a thing, she does make a joke that he is a very good beggar. And I just love how he's this buttoned up guy and he doesn't really color outside of the lines, and she constantly picks at him and just like pokes at him. And since he's very attracted to her, he just cannot resist. I really loved it. And I really love how she was with Luke. Even though she's not a mom and she's never nannied before, I love how she really fell in love with him. I just love how she defends him. I love how loyal she is. I just really love Willa very much. And actually read her newest release, Wild Love, and that book is about Willa's brother. And we get a cameo of Willa, and I loved seeing her there as well. So yeah, Willa, an amazing female character in my opinion. And then we have another historical romance, and it's In His Kiss by Julia Quinn, and I'm of course talking about Hyacinth. What I love about Hyacinth is that we have been following her, we have been seeing her ever since she was a little girl, and I have loved her ever since she was a little girl. I love how feisty she was as a little girl. I loved how she was the youngest, so, and there was a very big age gap between her and like the older characters in this series, but I loved how she held her own, and I just love how we slowly fell in love with her, and I really loved her in her own book. I loved how inquisitive she was. So in this book, so this is the 7th book in the Bridgerton series, and I believe in this book she helps out the lady, I forget her name. Yeah, Lady Danbury. And then Lady Danbury, I believe he has like a nephew, Gareth. And yeah, Garrett just doesn't have a good relationship with his father, and his mom died years ago, and she left him this diary. And apparently there's these jewels, as you can see here, that have been hidden, and Hyacinth finds that out, and she's determined to find those jewels. And I just love how inquisitive she is. Once she wants something, she goes after it with her whole heart and soul. And I really loved seeing her in this book. And I love how smart she is. So the diary's in Italian, and she knows Italian, so Gareth needs her to translate that for him. And I love how take charge she is, and how, like I said, once she wants something, she's like a bulldog. Nobody can get her to veer off that path, and I really love that. Very headstrong, and I also love how much she loves her family, and I loved the interactions we got between her and Gregory in this book. And yeah, Hyacinth, very funny, an amazing female main character in my opinion. You're from Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. Oh my god, do I love Yor. So in this book, you follow a spy named Lloyd, and for his mission, he needs to have a fake family. So he ends up marrying Yor, and he adopts a child named Anya, and together they're this fake family. And Yor is secretly an assassin, and I just really love Yor. I think she's such a hilarious character, and I love how competent Lloyd is at almost everything, and I love how disastrous Yor is at almost everything. Obviously, she's a skilled assassin, and that is something she does know how to do well, but almost everything else, she's not really that skilled at. Like, she doesn't know how to cook, she doesn't really know how to interact with people, and I love that about her. It's so very endearing. Like, every time I watch her like stumble a bit, it endears me to her so much. And what I also really love about Yor is what a beautiful and amazing mother she is. Obviously, she doesn't know anything about that, although I do have to say, when she was young, she basically took care of her brother on her own. So I guess she does have experience being a mom, except obviously she was not his mom, she was his sister. But I just love how she is with Anya, and how much she loves her, how protective she is of Anya. And I am shipping her and Lloyd hardcore, and hopefully this series will end with them actually falling in love. Yeah, I just love how protective she is of the people that she loves. And that, and I just love how she goes from 0 to 100 in an instant because she's so protective and because she's so loyal. Like, she's willing to literally kill people for the people she loves, which I just love to see. So yeah, Yor is such an amazing female character in my opinion. Amelia Hathaway from Mine Till Midnight by Lisa Kleypas. So Lisa Kleypas has some amazing female characters, and also the Hathaways. First of all, this is one of my favorite series because I gave every single one 5 stars and I fell in love with each and every single member of the Hathaway clan. But Amelia really does take the cake as far as female characters are concerned because she is so fiercely loyal, very protective, and really does want to take care of the people she loves. This is the first book in the Hathaway series, and you follow Amelia. I don't think she's the oldest one. Her brother, who's the heir to the Hathaways, like, he's the oldest and the only son, so he's the heir. He recently became a Viscount, and this Viscountcy is basically has a curse because like the last 3 or 4 people who became Viscount died pretty shortly afterwards. And Leo really is no fit to become a Viscount because 2 years ago, the love of his life died because of Spanish fever. And ever since then, he's been spiraling. He's been drinking a lot, gambling a lot, and basically wasting family's money and not doing what he's supposed to do, which is take care of his sisters. So that burden falls on her and she has to take care of the family and also take care of him. So one night she's looking for her brother in like the streets of London, and there while going into this gambling den, she meets Cam Rohan. And it's actually the gambling den she goes into is the Devil's Gambling Den from The Devil in Winter. And Cam you met in that book as well. So he's basically his right-hand man. Cam is Romani, and obviously she is like from the aristocracy. They end up falling in love, and I really felt, like I said, I really fell in love with Amelia because she just does whatever needs to happen, and because of that, like, she's the one that has to make all the smart decisions. And I loved in this book how once Cam comes into her life, she can loosen up a little bit, loosen up the reins a little bit. And I really love how once Cam comes into her life, she can unburden the burdens on her shoulders a little bit and have somebody else shoulder those burdens. And I love how even though she does really love, obviously, her brother, that she can give him some tough love and can really tell him that what he's doing is just not okay. I just really loved her. I thought she's such a strong heroine, even though obviously with all these historical romances, obviously these women, the fact that there's so many of them on my list is because they are constrained by the time they're living in. And despite that, they are still so strong in their own ways. And I really loved seeing Amelia, just watching her be that. And what I really love about her, since she gets the first book, you see her throughout all the other books become this like matriarch of the family. And what I also really love is in the rest of the stories, you also, even though obviously every single book you follow a different couple, you get perspectives from the other Hathaways sometimes as well. And I just loved seeing her building her own family, and I just love her so much. Another one that obviously I could not make a video without mentioning her is Aelin from the Throne of Glass series. I know a lot of people have issues with Aelin. I never did. I fell in love with her from the very beginning. I just love how strong she is, and I love how smart she is. So of course the Throne of Glass series, I'm sure a lot of you already know what Throne of Glass is about. I'm not gonna explain the synopsis. Love how she would literally do anything for the people that she loves. And even though sometimes the decisions she makes are a little bit harder to justify, but usually at the end of the day, you can understand why she did the things she did. And of course she's brash, she's rude, but I tend to like those characters. I prefer those heroines as opposed to the meek, mild ones, which obviously nothing wrong with that. But I just love the take charge heroines, the ones that do whatever they want. And she's exactly like that. She's been through so much. And yes, sometimes she does lash out to the people around her. And sometimes I cringe a little bit because I'm like, okay, you didn't need to do that. Like, for example, Kale, even though he's not one of my favorite characters, you guys know that. Sometimes when I look back at the way she treated him, I just felt so sorry for him. And that is a big feat because sometimes I was very angry at Kale. But sometimes I was like, okay, he did not deserve that, Aelin. But okay, even despite all that, I do love that because she's flawed. She's not perfect. And I don't want a perfect heroine. And I just really love her. And I love the fact that we spent a lot of time with Aelin. 7 books worth of time. Aelin, I just love her very much. And I've loved her ever since I first read Throne of Glass, which is in 2014. So I've loved her for 10 years, which actually I did a video celebrating my 10 years with Sarah J Maas, which I'll leave that linked for you. There you can see me gushing about Throne of Glass and Selena and all the other books that Sarah J Maas wrote. Eveline from Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. So once again, another historical romance heroine, and I just really loved her. And once again, another book where the hero is so amazing that with another heroine, his brightness would dull her a little bit in my eyes. But in this case, that didn't happen because she was just as amazing as he was. So this book, you follow the Montgomerys and the Armstrongs, and this is a Scottish romance, Highland romance, and they've been at war for generations, and there have been deaths, brutal deaths on both sides. And one day the king is sick of their constant fighting, so he forces Graham to marry the only daughter that the Armstrongs have, which is Eveline. And everybody thinks that Eveline is what they used to call back then touched in the head. So they think there's something like she has a mental disability. What they don't know, however, is that she used to be engaged to this awful, awful, sadistic man. And one day she fell off her horse and she's deaf now. And since she didn't want to marry this man, and she knew that if people thought that there was something wrong with her mentally, she wouldn't get married off and he wouldn't want to marry her. So she let people believe that that was what was going on, as opposed to her just being deaf. Graham thinks that, since he believes that, of course, because he has no reason not to, he thinks that the king has doomed him to a life of no heirs because he's not going to cheat on his wife and he's not going to force himself on a woman who technically cannot consent to that. So obviously he's a very, very good man. So Eveline, when she first sees him, since Graham has such a very, very low voice, she can hear, like she can kind of feel the vibrations. Like she can feel, I don't know, I don't know how to explain it, but since his voice is so low, she can kind of hear the vibrations, I guess. She's very interested to get married to him because she realizes that he is a very good guy. And when she gets to his keep, she feels safe enough to finally confess that she's deaf. And since she's so beautiful and very sweet, Graham is the happiest man in the world. Eveline, I just really loved how sweet she was. Like, she was such a sweet but very strong character too. I loved how, even though she's the literal enemy, like her family is the enemy, she slowly but surely makes his family fall in love with her. I just love how strong she is, how eventually she does convince everybody in the keep, almost everybody in the keep, that they should love her. And I just love how she's also very strong-willed. Like, when they get married, he puts her up in her own room and she's like, no, no, no. So she starts moving all her stuff into his bedroom because he's her husband. They should sleep in the same room. Like, I just love that. I just really fell in love with her so much. She was such a great female main character to follow. And I loved how, even though she does love her family and they do really love her, I love how she shines and really comes into her own once she is married to Graham. So yeah, really, really love her. Ada from The Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. Once again, a main character that some people might have issues with, but I really, really loved her. So this, once again, this brash character who does whatever she wants and basically is the queen of chaos. But then throughout this book, she does really grow up, and I did love seeing that as well. Once again, two rivaling families. So you follow the Griffins and the Gallows. They're both mafia families. The Gallows are the Italian mafia and the Griffins are the Irish mafia. And they've been sort of battling for control. They've never had an outright war, but it's kind of like simmering. And especially the kids have issues with each other. So one day the Gallows crash the Griffin's party, and Ada accidentally burns down Callum's office, and Callum is the heir to the Griffin Empire. And because of that, Callum ends up breaking Ada's brother's knee in like a very horrifying way, and he never really recovers from that. And since their fathers want to prevent an all-out war, they force Callum and Ada to get married to each other, and they obviously have to agree, but they don't go down without a fight because Ada finds out that Callum is allergic to strawberries, and of course on their wedding day she decides to eat some strawberries, and once he kisses her he ends up almost dying. And then after that he almost drowns her, and they have this like very passionate hate failed relationship in the beginning, and then slowly but surely they do become a team, and then they start falling in love. Like I said, I really loved Ada. Like, she is, like I said, very strong. Like, she doesn't go down willingly. She will fight you. She's like this, once again, this pit bull that will just bite at you if she feels cornered. And like I said, some people might have issues with that, but I really loved it. I just loved this hate to love romance, and a big part of that is because of Ada, because I thought she was such a strong heroine. Like, she can definitely, even though she's the only female in this mafia family, she can really hold her own. And I love how, once again, how protective she is. Like, she loves fiercely. Once she ends up falling in love with Callum, that passion, like, she's a very passionate woman. So she hates passionately, but she loves passionately as well. And I really love that. This is the first book in the Brutal Birthright series. And I, in my opinion, thought it was a very, very good first book. And once again, because it was the first book, you do see Ada growing up a little bit and eventually becoming a mom. And I just really love that. I very much love Ada as a character. Lillian from It Happened One Autumn by Lisa Kleypas. Once again, a very brash, loud, boisterous heroine, and she's paired with this buttoned up Earl, and I, once again, just loved her so much. So this is the second book in the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas, and Lillian and Marcus have had some interactions. In the first book, he's from the British aristocracy. She's a very, like I said, loud American heiress. And he really doesn't want anything to do with her. He has no interest in marrying her. He has no interest in really interacting with her. But they constantly keep getting pushed together because of these balls. And I believe he has like a business deal with her father. And they are like complete opposites. But then one passionate kiss leads to more. And first of all, this is one of my favorite books of all time. And Lillian is a big part of that, because she just doesn't care. Doesn't care at all. And once again, in this world that she lives in, even though apparently in this world, like in this era, Americans were a little bit freer, it's still like she is constrained by the times that they live in. And I just really love how she just doesn't care. Like, she will run around in her underwear and doesn't care. And I just love that about her. I love how she makes him less buttoned up, and I love how he makes her grow up a little bit. And once again, since Lisa Kleypas's characters do, like, her world is like connected, you do see, first of all, you do see Lillian in the other books in the Wallflower series, but you also see her in the Wallflower series, especially in Mine Till Midnight, the book I just talked about. You do see a little bit of a grown-up Lillian, and I also really love that. You do see some mischievous side to her still, but she has grown up, and I do love that. I love how stubborn she is. She does what she wants, and I do love how they don't change each other, but they do soften each other's edges. And for her, it's the prim and properness that she changes, but he's the one that kind of tames her down a little bit. So I do love that. And even though at first glance you think these people don't have anything in common, at the end of the day, they do make sense together, and I loved watching that. And like I said, Lillian is so vibrant. Like, every time I think about the Wallflower series, she's the one that stands out to me the most, because she's a little bit different from the rest, and I just loved her so much. And I loved what a loyal friend she is as well. I just love her so much. Another Sarah J. Maas heroine is Nesta from A Court of Silver Flames. Once again, a heroine that a lot of people have issues with, but I loved her because of that. As you can see, I don't really prefer perfect characters, because if you watch my favorite book boyfriends, a lot of my favorite book boyfriends are like scarred, tortured heroes. The same kind of applies for my female main characters. I just like women who are just not perfect, because I'm not perfect, and I don't really have any interest in reading about perfect women. Nesta was kind of awful in the first trilogy, and I can definitely see why a lot of people have issues with her. In fact, I definitely had some issues with her when I first read the Court of Thorns and Roses series, especially the way she treated Feyre, which is not okay at all, especially since Feyre did nothing to deserve that. But once we finally get her book, you do understand why she's the way she is. And like I said, I'm not trying to make excuses for that. I just wanted to understand her, and I do feel like Sarah J. Maas did a great job in making me understand Nesta. I just love that. I love with Nesta that we actually got to see every single aspect of her. Like, since we have seen her ever since the first book, we have seen her at her worst, and then we have seen her at her best, and I just love that. I love how multifaceted she is. I love how, yes, she can hurt you with her words. Like, she does know that. Like, she kind of can look at somebody and know how to hurt them, and then sometimes she does take advantage of that, but then when she loves you, she will do anything in her power to be there for you and love you, and she would like literally lay down her life for the people she loves, and I do love that. I just loved watching her grow in this book, watching her heal in this book. And this is another side of mental health that just doesn't get addressed much. That sometimes when you're struggling, you become mean just to keep people at a distance. And I loved seeing that. Even though obviously it's heartbreaking because you don't want somebody to go through that, but it is pretty realistic. And yes, even though I'm not excusing what she did to the other characters we love, what happened to her was pretty awful, and I get it. I get that hurts and that makes you lash out. But I do love how she ends up making amends, and I just love her. This book I actually read twice. Even though I love Cassian, it was really Nesta's story, and Nesta was the one that really shines in this book. And I just love how at the end of the day, she gets everything she wants, like a friendship, a family, and her mate. And I love that. And last but most certainly not least is, of course, Kate from The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. This book is one of my favorite books of all time, and Kate is a big, big reason why that is. I love Kate. I love her so much. So this book, you follow Anthony and Kate, and Anthony is the oldest Bridgerton child, and he wants to get married and get an heir, but since his father died very young, he's convinced that he will as well. So since he saw what that did to his mom, he doesn't want to do that to anybody else. So his plan is to marry somebody but never love them. And Kate overhears that. And Kate has this sister who she really, really loves. And the sister is like the most beautiful girl in the ton. And Anthony has his eye out on Kate's sister. And since Kate overheard him say that, she doesn't want her sister to get married to somebody who has no intention of loving her. So she makes it her mission in life to sabotage him getting with her sister. And she's an older heroine, well, older for the time that this takes place in. So she's a wallflower, she's firmly on the shelf, and she usually has to go with them on their dates. First of all, this book was really funny, and a big part of that is because of Kate. She's a very funny character. She just gets herself into all kind of hilarious situations. I love how passionate she is about the people she loves, but also like about silly things like Pall Mall, which is the game they're playing. I love how competitive she gets and how competitive Anthony gets. Once again, this is the second book. I always love it. I think it's always a treat when we see Kate in the other books. I love how she eventually firmly becomes, even though obviously the Bridgerton mom is still alive, I love how since she's married to the Viscount, that she becomes sort of like also the matron of the family. I really love her so much. She's just a great, great, great heroine. And actually, I've only read this once, and I keep saying it's one of my favorites, and I do believe that it is, but I really want to reread it this year, and I cannot wait. So this is probably a very long video, but those were my 15 favorite female characters as of now. Which is April of 2024. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you agree with any of my choices, and also I would really love to know what are some of your favorite female characters. Doesn't matter what genre, I would really love to know. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did, and thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.